Hey, boys and girls, we're going to start talking about comparing fractions this week. Okay. We spent a chapter on learning what fractions are. They're numbers. Most of them are less than one, but we also talked about having fractions greater than one. Now we're going to compare them, which means we're going to talk about two different fractions in relation to each other. So we're going to say like 1/2 and 1/8, or 3/4 and 2/5. And we're going to decide which one's greater, which one's less, and sometimes they're equal to each other. Now, if we were in class right now, we would pull out manipulatives called fraction strips. I love fraction strips. They are little plastic baggies and they have little plastic bars in them. I really wish you had them at home to do this with, but I found this cool website with virtual fraction strips. So while they're not exactly the same, you can get the basic idea of how they work. Something else you may want to do is I will attach a link for fraction strips like on paper. You can cut them out and use them. I like the plastic ones better, but the paper ones work if you find it difficult to use this online. Okay, so that's an option. So let me write myself a note. Paper strips. Because if I don't write it down, it's not happening. Okay. So let me show you. So if we were in school, I would give everybody a bag of these and we would spend some time figuring out how they work. So in a bag of fraction strips, there's always a strip that is one whole. Now, this is not my ideal screen right here because I want that whole bar across there to be one, but they've designed this so you can use this for fractions greater than 1 too. So let's think about this purple is one whole. And I'm just dragging and dropping these. I'm going to click on this 1/2 and I'm going to put it underneath of there and take a look. It slides right in. So from looking at 1 and 1/2, which fraction, well, 1 isn't quite a fraction, so I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take a 1/3 and put it up there, okay? Now, from looking at 1/2 and 1/3, look at the actual size of the strip. So this pink one from here to here. Look at 1/3, this orange one from here to here, okay? The actual size of it. Which fraction there is bigger? This is why I love fraction strips, because you can visually see that 1/2 is larger, it's a larger amount than 1/3 because it's longer, okay? So I'm going to pull up, we have 1/2, we have 1/3. Let's pull up 1/4. Now, can you see what's the biggest out of all those? Can you see what's the smallest? Now, it's always important to have one whole up here because this tells you what this fraction is in reference to. Okay, if you have two wholes, these become something different. But I don't want to worry about two wholes. So now, if we were doing these in class, this bar will only let me go down 4. If we were doing these in class, we would list all these going down. Then we would put, so we did 1, 1/2, 1/3, 1/4. We would stick 1/5 down there. And can you see the size of 1/5 compared to 1/4 and 1/3? Look, you can even, I'm not letting go of my mouse, but you can see it if you want to compare it. Okay. We would put 1/6, and you can see 1/6, 1/8, 1/10, and 1/12. Okay. So I think I can get these away. So let's maybe try this. Let's look at some different ones and let's compare them to 1/2. Now, it does not matter what order they're in because you can compare fractions in any order. Out of these, which looks like the smallest? Which fraction looks like it represents the smallest amount? Well, I am going to take a stab at it. And I think 1/8 is the smallest fractional part there. Okay. And I'm going to say that 1/2 is probably the largest fractional part. And 1/5 is somewhere in the middle. Now, I want you to look at these denominators. This is important. What do you notice about the denominator when you're comparing fractions? When I'm up here with 1/8, that denominator 8 is bigger than 5 and 2, but the fractional part is actually smaller. 1/8 is smaller than 1/2, even though 8 is bigger than 2 and 8 is bigger than 5. And you'll find, let's get rid of one of these here. Let me throw this guy in here. Look at that denominator. It's 12. Is that bigger or smaller? And let's think about this pattern of denominators compared to the size of the fractional piece. Let me go like this, because this might even make it, oh, where'd you go? Let's make it a little more clear. And the pattern that I'm noticing, tell somebody in your house, or your mom, or your dad, or your dog. Speaking of dogs, we got our puppy Nala from Claire and Mrs. Wenzel. That's a whole another story. Okay, we'll talk about that. She's awesome. But what do you notice about these denominators? 12 is really small and 2 is big. So the pattern that I have going here, and this happens when you're comparing fractions, the bigger the denominator, the smaller the amount. Okay, I'm going to say that again. I want you to repeat it. The bigger the denominator, the smaller the amount, or the smaller the fractional piece. That's going to be important the more we go on. Okay, so the larger or the bigger the denominator, the smaller the fractional piece. So I am going to share this website with you. I want you to play around with it. Okay, you can just put these fractions up. The part that I dislike the most is that you can only put 3 there, because when we would do this in class, we would make like a, you can't see because I'm on the camera. We would end up like making a thing that goes like, almost halfway down our desk. And then it like makes it really easy to say. Okay, let me just flip to this. Is this going to go? Okay, this is another way to see it. And I kind of like this one because it only has, you can put one hole up here, and that's a hole. Okay, and the way this works is you change the numerator and the denominator. And do you see how the size of the piece changes? Now, again, you can only put 3 on there, which is unfortunate, but whatever, But look at the size. So I'm keeping 1, I'm keeping it a unit fraction. Look at my denominators at 2. The bigger I make this, what happens to the size of that piece? Think about the pink and then look at the yellow. When I made the denominator go up, the size of the piece got smaller. Okay, do you see? Now here it's throwing in like 1/7, 1/9, 1/12 on fraction strips if we cut them out, or even on the other page. We don't use those 1/7, 1/9. They kind of stick with the even numbers because they're more common, okay, at least at this point in learning about fractions. So part of your assignment today for math, I want you to play around with these strips and see how they compare to each other. That's 1 whole. That's 1/7, okay? Let's put 1/6 up there. That's 1/6. And you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many sixths would make 1 whole? Well, if they were all colored in, it would be 6 sixths. So part of your math assignment today is to get onto this website and is to play around with and compare these fractions to one another before we even start any kind of math pages, math problems. This would be like probably a whole day in class discovering these pieces and trying to figure out how they work and their relation to each other. Okay, so I'll also attach the fraction strips so you can cut them out and do all that. If that is easier, or if you like that better than doing it on the computer. All right, guys, I hope you have a great Monday, and I will see you soon.